Hello everyone, today we're going to be talking about making your presentations better. And here at Hallmark we do have a lot of courses that require students to make presentations as part of their grade. And by going through this specific presentation, you'll be able to not only make your presentations pop out more, but also avoid those common pitfalls that make a presentation very deadly for your audience. So before we go through everything, we're going to go through the learning objectives, and by the end of this presentation, you'll be able to create higher quality presentations, identify the best practices for presentations, avoid common pitfalls of bad presentations, and also integrate past knowledge of your own presentation making with the new content you're about to get through here. The first thing, the common rule that we usually follow here in presentations when you're making these kinds of things is you want to avoid wordiness. So the common rule of thumb is 7 words or fewer. When you're making these kinds of presentations, you want to be focused solely on you. Your PowerPoint, your Prezi, your pamphlets, whatever you're using as a visual aid, those are aids. Those are basically supplements to the information. You are always going to be the source of information, and that's what you want to establish. Whenever you're making presentations, you want to be able to keep the focus on you. I'll show you guys a bad example of what wordiness does to a slide. So here we have a bad example. Some reasons why you shouldn't do this is that each point has a lot of unnecessarily long sentenced information to read. The audience is spending more time looking at the PowerPoint than listening to the speaker. Most of the times, the audience would most probably just try to take a picture so that they can focus more. This makes the audience less interested with the topic and more focused on reading, and you don't want that happening. It also makes the audience more anxious to read through the text instead of focusing on the speaker, and that's what you want to avoid as well. So let me give you guys a better way on how to do this. So you want to use keywords, and you want to go straight to the point. You want to be clear, you want to be concise, and basically, like what I said earlier, keywords only. So that's what you want whenever you're making presentations. You want to be able to just put up the keywords and explain it thoroughly, so that your audience wouldn't be distracted by the wordiness in your PowerPoint presentation. So they will see the word, they'll read it, they'll understand what it is through you actually explaining it. Next point that we want to talk about is going to be this one right here. So don't bother with templates. You never want to use templates. The first thing I do when I make a presentation is delete everything. And then I tailor that to whatever I need that presentation to be. So depending on the assignment, depending on what you need to present, the topic, the theme, it's a matter of what you need accomplished. So for example, here I used a picture as my background and also to emphasize my point. And there's a common thing that you want to keep in mind here. So you want to be able to use high resolution pictures if you're going to use them as backgrounds, just like this. Normally I would use Flickr.com. I would go to Flickr.com and actually look for pictures there, because they do have high resolution pictures. I'll give you guys an example right here. So this is Flickr.com, and say for example I need a picture of a tower. I will just search tower, and this also helps, especially if you need to cite or use references in terms of the pictures that you use. So say for example I have it here. I want to use a specific picture. You want to change this setting right here, this advanced search, to Creative Commons, all Creative Commons. And what this means is that you can use these pictures so long as you credit the photographer. That's essentially what you need. Say for example I want to use this picture right here. I'll go in, and basically in terms of citations, whether it's APA, MLA, or whatever you need, you'll be able to take all of the information from here. You have who the photographer is, you have the name of the picture, you have when it was taken, and you can download it through here, and you'll see the resolutions here. As much as possible, you want it as high as possible. Okay, now let's get back to presentation here. Next point, sometimes less is more. You don't have to use the whole canvas. You don't have to use the whole slide. You can use a small portion of it to make your point come across a little bit better. And that's always something that a lot of people forget. Sometimes they want to fill the whole thing and it crowds the whole slide out. Okay, next point here, we want to limit transitions and animations. Only use them to make a point, and don't try to use it so that whoops, sorry, let me move that back. Let me move myself here. Don't try to use transitions and animations to make your presentations flashy. What that does is makes it really tacky, and you don't want that. You want to be able to just limit it and only use it to emphasize something in this actual presentation. So I'll give you guys an example of something that's really annoying. Something like this that has a lot of sound effects. Let me lower my volume here because I'm going deaf. So say for example here we have this where each slide has a transition, has a sound, and it takes so much time to load through all of this, and it looks tacky. That's the bottom line. It really does look tacky. So you want to be able to avoid that. You want your transitions to make sense why they're there. There has to be a reason why you're putting transitions and animations as opposed to just it being an option for you to be able to do that. Next thing that we're going to be talking about is fonts. So let's talk about fonts, the do's and don'ts, and understanding how to complement sans with serif and sans serif fonts. So for those of you who don't know what sans serif and serif fonts are, here we have a sans serif font. This is a serif font. What serif fonts means is whenever a font has these flourishes around these letters like these, you see those are going to be your serif fonts. What sans serif means, sans meaning without, are the ones that don't have those flourishes, and it's been proven by research. I can't remember exactly which ones, but those with sans serif fonts are always easier to read when you're in the audience, whether you're in the front or back. A lot of the times it's a lot harder to read serif fonts when it's projected onto a screen. So you want to utilize that knowledge to make your presentations better for the experience of the audience. So that's what I normally do. I use serif fonts as my header because they emphasize that these are the headers, these are the things that you need to know, and then the sans serif fonts are going to be the ones who are going to be text heavy, and that's what you want, so that it's easier to read when it's text heavy. So next thing, don't be this guy who found a cool font online and decided it was appropriate enough. See the point here, it's really hard to read, and if you actually present this or project this through a classroom, this is going to be really hard to read. As you can see here, there's lack of spaces in between the points as opposed to the one on the left where it's actually separated and you'll be able to identify each point against each other. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to talk about are colors. So use color to add emphasis or importance. So you see here, just a small subtle color change makes it pop so much more, and you'll be able to even add transitions here. It's all a matter of how you want to make this emphasis pop out as much as you want. So that's something that's always an option and always underutilized by a lot of people. Font color is one of the things aside from font itself. So make sure to use color palettes, and let me move my face here real quick. There we go. So make sure to use color palettes. Don't just choose a color willy-nilly just because you like what the color is. You have to make sure that they actually blend and complement each other. And normally I just Google color palettes, and then I would use a specific theme depending on what kind of presentation I have, and then I would just stick within that theme to make it all fit together and actually work. Okay, so the last thing we're going to do is talk about this. Thou shalt follow the rule of 10, 20, 30. What this means is that when you have 10 slides, the general rule of thumb is to take about less or more 20 minutes and you usually want to use 30-point font or larger. Depending on the font that you're using, it's going to be sometimes bigger, sometimes smaller. So, but normally you want to stick at least 30-point font larger. So what we're talking about here, say for example, this presentation has 13 slides, about 13 slides, and I am at 11 minutes right now. The 20 minutes is arbitrary, depending on how long or how content heavy your presentation is. You don't have to fill that whole 20 minutes. You don't want to go over too much with that 20 minutes, depending on how many slides you have, because of the fact that sometimes when you have a lot of content, you want to be able to space it out, or maybe divide it into pieces. The 30-point font or larger things, because of the fact that sometimes you have to take into account the resolutions of the projector. Sometimes it looks okay on your screen, but once you project it, it's actually too small and people can't read it. So a general rule of thumb is you want to start at 30-point font or larger. If you have the option to actually test it out, I would suggest going to asking your instructor, and maybe you can project it and test to see if you can actually read it through the projector, or if not, then just go safe and make it as big as possible without cluttering your actual slide. So let's recall some of the things that we learned. Aside from the 7 words or less or fewer, you want to be able to use your pictures as tools. You want to avoid common pitfalls like wordiness and overuse of transitions, and you want to use fonts and font size and font colors as emphasis. And last thing we actually learned is the general 10-20-30 rule. And that's pretty much it about the presentation. I hope you guys learned, and thank you guys for listening to me, and I will end it there.